Hello! Welcome to this year's final episode of the year. An episode of History's All Right. And today, we're going to talk about writing family. Because in a way, what could be more Christmassy than family? I mean, apart from the birth of Jesus Christ, but we'll get onto that later. And funnily enough, I'm actually filming this on the Feast of the Holy Family, although you'll see it later, but that's by and by. Anyway, as I said in a previous video, not all my viewers are Catholic, but still. Let's just keep chatting. Because, and I just want to put on a note here that this episode, there might be an element of politics in it. Because, well, families can be quite political. After all, if your setting is in a feudal society, or indeed to a lesser extent any society in which wealth or social standing are inherited, then a family will be an important political unit. That said, yes, but and of course there are those who argue that the home environment of the upbringing of a character will be a prime determinant of how that character perceives the world and interacts with it. And yes, I know that there are also plenty of people who say that that's not true. But there is a time and a place for a big load of detail on that kind of subject, and that is the video on Autism and Me about public life. And also, yes, there's perhaps maybe a modicum of, how do I put this? That sort of thing, the thing that might get someone in the family way, as they used to say it. But I won't go into detail here because I find even snogging just ew. Even watching it, never done it myself, but like, ew. So I'd much rather just move that to I'll bite the bullet and do that, give that its own video. Anyway. There might be a little, but we won't touch on too much of that too much. Anyway. Only what's necessary. But let us continue, because we're going to talk a bit about family. And you might be asking yourself, writing family? Why? Why does it need a bit of a video on that? But, point is, the word family, there are lots of contexts and ways the word is used. There's the nuclear family, the extended family, the step family, the biological family, the found family. Britain is described as a family of nations. England, Wales and Scotland. I happen to be of English and Scottish descent, with various non-British descents as well. Irish, Germanic, and Spanish, but we'll park those to one side. Just to keep things simple here. speaking of which, my accent is often described as a bit posh. As having that I'm... And, well, that's for a reason. I have practiced this accent over many years. Because when I said my family that I'm of English and Scottish descent, that wasn't the most precise way of phrasing it. For they are in fact of Highland, Isle of Man, Lancashire and West Country roots. These being their own distinct cultures within the sort of within England and Scotland respectively. But of course, not always the most well regarded. If you might even, you see depictions of yokels or country bumpkins, they might have an accent like this and start talking or be flower. Yes. And one of the things I was advised to do was get rid of the more Western Isle tones in my voice, tone down the accent to sound more professional. Sure, it's not quite the cut glass English accent, although I can do a cut glass Scottish accent quite well, apparently. That sort of nice Edinburgh accent. In fact, I was advised, maybe do that one, because apparently my hair being all nice and curly would at least people might see it as Scottish, which had more social standing than Irish back in the day. Yes, there's a sort of genteel kind of way. But still, I'm telling you this for a good reason, however. Not just to break the idea of homogeneity in England, not just to try and break down the idea that England is a homogeneous unit, because hey, nations are great in a lot of ways. And this might be the Irish in me speaking, but I'm not a big fan of borders. So why am I telling you this? Because families exist in a context. Culture being an easy example, but often when people talk about families, they often focus on this kind of idea. There be one Aaron, he'd be taking out his craft, macking his trade, and taking a woman for his waffin, sprinkling her with geld and finery, so she be making him babby. Dwo kende, and lad, and lassie. The lad be grown in mischief, so he be stronger when he be older, and the lassie be grown in manners, so she have virtue when she grow older. And then he be taken, and then him, when older, he be going to his parent. We another wee lassie, another wee lassie, to take her as his weapon, and she be finding a lad for herself, and they be moving out and making their own ways, and all be isolated on their own plantation land, a sad curve of the earth, away from all that, away from all others, nae clan, nae Colin, nae Camion, nae anything, just themselves. This being the nuclear family, which I could even code switch And you probably still understood what I was talking about. Aye. But still. Anyway. And that sort of idea, but really how exist in a context, in a community. Oh yeah, sorry, I just remembered. I wasn't sure how the word, yeah, didn't really have a word for suburb, but think plantation, like in Ireland, like the Plantation Act in Ireland. Yeah, Ireland. But still. Anyway, what am I talking about? I know. Family. We think of context, but actually, it's what we call an extended family. The cultural background of a family. That will affect how they interact with everyone else. The sort of value matrix, their social function, their income level. All these things and more will go into how your family is perceived by their neighbours, perceived by other people who know them. Are they well known in the area? Are they well known to others? What kind of family are they? All these things and more will give you that sort of family shape, or at least how society sees that family. And this will sort of create ideas. But I'll tell you one thing. Being seen as sort of all these different descents meant that I was often, how shall I put it, not out of anyone's tribe. Which did mean people would come to me about stuff that they didn't feel able to talk about with others, because that would disrupt the tribal diplomacy. Whereas you could tell me all sorts of things, and I was just the foreigner. The Auslander. And hey, from my viewers east of the Pennines, Belgium's east of the Pennines, so I guess it's okay. And more to the point, we're talking. So that's the thing. So when you're thinking, does my family fit the norm of the society they live in? Or what kind of relationship do they have with the wider society that they're a part of? That's an important thing to think about, because one will shape the other, and, well, both will shape each other to an extent. Although it's more like the aggregate of families in that case. And then, of course, we got the inner workings of the family, the dynamics. Because, well, there's kind of like ideas of what a family should or shouldn't be. I mean, and one that we talk about at church, a young lass, a young lass gets pregnant, enters into a sexless relationship with her husband. They never had sex at all. He raises someone else's child, knowing it's someone else's child. And that someone else is deeply involved in both the life of the mother and the life of the baby. In fact, I'll show you a picture now from our Walk With Me book. And you might be thinking, okay, Ed, that's very clever. You came up with something like that when you were talking about the Virgin Mary all along. But there is a good reason. And that is, the Holy Family perhaps teaches us something. Even in a secular light. Because a lot of times people seem to get hung up on the mechanics of a family. Whether the mum and dad are married, whether there's a mum and dad at all, how many kids they've got, the exact sex and gender makeup of the kids, and just all these other things, but there's actually a meaning to a family. So when you're writing, what does that meaning show us? Because, that's part of the point with the Holy Family, is that it's an ideal form of family. But it's not but not necessarily because of the mechanics, since, well, that would require God to literally get involved and require a virgin birth and everything. But the point is, it's about what they mean to one another. The love, the support, the way they care for one another, the way they look after one another. Even if they don't fit the norm. Because let's face it, if Jesus had fitted the norm, he wouldn't have been crucified. Think about that for a moment. But my sort of slightly wily take on theology aside, the point is, when a family means something to its people, it's about the meaning, it's about the love and support. And I'll be honest with you, marriage, it's an interesting concept, because it's like, I'm not talking about the sacrament here, I'm talking about the legal side of it. Because you see, in law, there's this concept called marriage, whereby the state recognises the relationship between two people. Traditionally one man, one woman, although some jurisdictions allow for a man and a woman to get married. But the thing is it more of a family just because the state says it is? And don't get me wrong, getting married can be a brilliant thing for a lot of people, and it can bring a lot of happiness, but it's just whether it's for everyone. But anyway, I say this is getting a bit political now, so think about it. Say, when you're writing, think, what does each person mean to each other? Don't get too hung up on their exact relationship, because to be quite honest, it'll only slow your plot down if you're trying to describe, and so he was the son of the, think about, does he, the person who in his life is dad, does he like him? Does he not like him? Or she, or they, or whoever. You can fill in your pronouns however your character wants. Anyway. So you put your characters into this position of the person who is there for them, there with them, and in a lot of ways, there's another point about families that I've noticed over the years, partly from being the one that people turn to when all the relationships break down. Yeah. And then stopping the exes from fighting one another. Not in my own family, other people's families. Families at social events. But anyway, I'm not gonna name names around here. And hey, most of you don't live in Britain, so it wouldn't mean much to you anyway. But point is, people are people. And they have relationships. Some are happy, some are sad. And a state document doesn't say whether someone actually loves someone, because you can't command someone to love. But theology aside, when you're writing your characters, think less about how their relationship would be described in a kinship system. I mean, if you're doing an overall description of a clan makeup or something, I'll get to that word later. Think of it beginning with a C. then yes, it would make sense. Just a brief description. But we really don't need much more than that. Focus on how they work with one another. And as I say, that word clan. I know, especially for my American audiences, that probably sends shivers down your spine. And no worries. Think of it more like but there's this thing that exists in like Ireland, the Highlands of Scotland, and parts of northwest England too. Of a sort of extended family unit, including the dead members, or those who have passed on, and remembering them. And this carried forth by a name down through time. And so, with these names, and so each member of the clan, in a close-knit clan culture, you'd have people whereby all your individual members, it would be a sort of social hub. Essentially, the clan would be like a big family, but would be part of an even bigger family. And that would act as the sort of social glue on your society. Prior to the nation state, this was a lot more common around the world. Although in some places it started then beforehand, and in some places it would last a lot longer than that. Anyway. And the point is, when you have these kind of social and these social and familial bonds, you can approach one another. And so that's a point, actually. What do we spread within the family? Does your family tell the stories of past members? Do they keep traditions going? Over there, I've shown you in an earlier video of my book, when I was showing off my bookcase, a fortress built by my grandfather, hewn of wood by his hand. Of course, there are some people I consider family, even though they're technically not blood relatives, but they're like but they're like long-term extended friends of the family. Which, to my mind is still part of family because, well, because of how they mean. Do we share our heritage? Do you keep it going? Keep hold of the traditions and pass those on to future generations and keep the story living? Hence why, for example, was sharing some of the stories of our family over the years to keep that story alive. The familial story, which, yes, has been somewhat replaced by the national story for a lot of people. Perhaps I should do an episode on history's alright with regards to nations. But still. Say, what kind of things do they pass on? What kind of things do they pass between? And also, how close are they? And now, some people think close is the kind of thing where you have your saying. One person whose will is made, usually a father figure. Although sometimes it can be a mother figure, what they sometimes call the matriarch. And that they give their word, and that word is full and obeyed and stuff like that. But in a way that's not closeness, that's more control. And in a way, what you're really looking for, one of the signs of closeness is how able people are to accept difference. Because if one person's different and another's not, one person's different in the family, for whatever reason, one of the signs of a close family is being able to embrace that person as who they are. Because whatever else, family comes first. You look out for one another, you help one another, you be there for one another. you know, you might be able, and the fact that you're able to disagree. Yeah, that's normally a sign of a close family. Being able to, like, discuss things that may be controversial, may be disagreeing with another. Yep. And, you know, those family discussions of politics being an example. So many of my friends tell me how difficult them are. And I see that. I do. Of course, in a family where it's all a bit more one of those things, you know, when you got that whole legacy of combined heritages, you kind of learn to muck along. Anyway, so that's kind of like the idea. Closeness is about how you can basically cohesive, how much you are together, how much you're able to share with one another. And of course, meaning, what people mean to one another. Those are the things. Those kind of things are what you really ought to be focusing on when you're writing your family. Don't get hung up on the exact relationship terminology, is what I'm saying. It'll slow you down. And really what you want is a meaningful family, is to show the reader what the family means to one another, rather than what legal definition their relationships have. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that 2025 is a beautiful year for yous. And well, I'll be seeing you then as well, and we'll have some more fun stuff going. Yeah, in fact, I got my family on down. We're going to have some videos. And hey, some of my family grew up in London too. Even if some was seen as outsiders back then. But hey, I come from a long line of people seen as social outsiders. But we're respectable outsiders. And so that's the point. There's nuance to all this. Yeah, it's not as simple as, you know, you can always add these kind of nuances, increase the flavour, increase the story arcs. And that's the thing with nuances in discussions. Each one can be a new story point, a new way of leading the character one way or another. And so, before I completely bore you to death, it was lovely having you here.